stories of Resident Evil have many iconic heroes and villains. And amongst all of this, however, there are also often victims. Be it victims of experimentation or circumstance, for horror to really impact, it often needs a human element. We've talked about a few of these before, but it really only scrapes the surface when it comes to sympathetic stories in the BIOHAZARD canon. I'm Steve for First Aid Spray, and this is 5 more tragic characters. MANUELA HIDALGO, Resident Evil, DARKSIDE Chronicles. Javier Hidalgo was the leader of the Sacred Snakes, a South American crime syndicate that had dealings with Umbrella in the early 90s. In a bid to stop his wife's terminal cancer, the desperate Javier purchased the T-virus and injected it into her body. Alas, the infection was too strong and she perished from mutation. Over the next decade, Hidalgo would keep his contracts in bioweaponry, and, in 2001, Javier's teenage daughter Manuela developed symptoms for the same disease. Javier again reached out for help, this time purchasing the far superior T-VERONICA virus. Advised by his contact, one Albert Wesker, Manuela would have to undergo constant surgeries to replace her vital organs in order to control the virus. Thus, the Sacred Snakes pushed their business into kidnapping and organ trafficking to sustain Hidalgo's daughter's life as much as possible. After a year of this, the mutation still grew and eventually spread further. Shocked by what was happening to her body, Manuela ran away from home and was eventually rescued by Leon Kennedy and Jack Krauser. She guided them to Javier's whereabouts, where she learnt the truth of her father's dark secrets within the Sacred Snakes and about the nature of her condition. She had been kept alive by the organization's work, harvesting organs of countless girls her age. Emotionally distraught, Manuela tapped into the power of the T-VERONICA virus, but developed the ability to control her human form. Following this, Manuela was taken into the custody of the US government, where it's to be assumed she is still undergoing constant organ transfer to keep her alive. ALFRED ASHFORD, Resident Evil, Code Veronica. The 3 founding families of Umbrella are all very different and corrupt in their own ways, but it's the Ashfords who have the most twisted and complex backstory of all. We've previously touched on Alexander Ashford's tragic story, but it's interesting to note that his choices beget another cruel and unfortunate tale. In his pursuit of the artificial development of his daughter Alexia, Alexander also accidentally creates a twin in Alfred Ashford. Forever living in the shadow of his family, in particular his genius sister, must have given Alfred a complex at the young age he was. Whilst clever himself, his intellect paled in comparison to hers, and he swore loyalty to her plans, viewing himself as a knight to the heir of the Ashford throne. However, things began to crack when Alfred discovered the truth of his origin locked away in the family's Antarctic base. After murdering their father for lying about their origin, Alexia Ashford locks herself in suspended animation in order to complete the gestation for her research of the T-VERONICA virus. With his father gone and his sister missing, Alfred becomes desperately isolated. The responsibilities as head of the Ashford estate are placed on his shoulders, which seem to be a burden too heavy to bear as well. To cope with the loss of his beloved sister, Alfred unknowingly creates a schizophrenic personality, talking to himself as though he is Alexia and eventually dressing as her. In a Psycho-esque turn of events, this extra personality only exists in the Ashford private residence, and Rockfort workers are told and convinced that Alexia lives there in seclusion. Nobody knows the real truth, and Alfred himself is even convinced by his own mind, judging by his reaction when he sees himself in the mirror. Driven mad by inferiority, the accident of his birth and isolation is bad enough, but inspection of files and the DARKSIDE Chronicles retelling of Code Veronica's events show that his adored sister didn't hold him in quite the same regard that he felt for her. While for the most part he is a pretty irredeemable human being and his actions are very cruel and sadistic, that doesn't mean that Alfred does not have an air of sympathy to him. George Trevor, Resident Evil. The Ashfords aren't the only example that tragedy can run in the family. We previously told the story of Lisa Trevor, the daughter of the architect of the Spencer Mansion, and the horrific experiments that she endured. But what happened to her father? In the early 60s, George Trevor was enlisted by Oswell E. Spencer to design a mansion that promised no limit to Trevor's imagination. Money was no object to the Earl, and Trevor's artistic mind was drawn to the project, so much that he didn't question Spencer's eccentric ideas for secret rooms and passageways. In November 1967, after the building is complete, George visits the mansion. However, Spencer's invitation comes with a dark truth, and that's the search for human test subjects for the progenitor virus. Trevor, knowing what he does about the secrets of the mansion, must be disposed of, and Spencer seeks to make use of this opportunity. By the time he arrives, George's wife and child have already been subjected to the virus in the secret facility underneath them, and Spencer spins lies to the architect that they are visiting family in the city and will return soon. After hearing nothing from them for days, George decides to politely leave to find his family. However, he is ungraciously knocked unconscious in the main hall and wakes in a cell under the mansion. After 3 days, he finds his way out to explore the dark halls of the beast that he helped create. Of course, his escape is all in Spencer's plans, a test of the facility's security. For the next few days, Trevor sneaks around the mansion and its grounds under the watchful eye of Spencer and his men as he tries to escape, eventually being led down a very specific path. With his final match, he lights up the room that he finds himself trapped in to see his very own gravestone. There he collapses and dies, unaware of the fate of his family, and his own demise left a mystery to the rest of the world. NATALIA KORDA, Resident Evil Revelations 2. Whilst the destruction of Raccoon City is rightly remembered throughout the Resident Evil universe as a truly shocking moment in history, it doesn't stand alone as the only time a city is vaporized after the release of a BOW. A metropolis floating on the ocean, Terra Grigia, was forced to destroy itself in 2004 and took with it countless lives. One life saved, however, was NATALIA KORDA. Orphaned by the destruction and traumatized beyond belief, the experience left the toddler mentally scarred to the point of no longer being able to feel fear. This event would prove to shape the rest of her life. One man, implicit in her rescue, Terra saves Neil Fisher, would later connect with Alex Wesker. Seeking to cause another Terra Grigia-like event in order to show the world that they must revive the Federal Bioterrorism Commission, he made a deal. For a sample of the Ouroboros virus, he gave Wesker a list of names for potential subjects in her ongoing experiments with T. Phobos. Due to her inability to feel fear, he included Natalia's name on this list, and sure enough, she would find herself abducted and abandoned on Wesker's private island. Whilst Barry Burton was there to protect her, her abilities made her the prime candidate in Alex's plan for her to leave her own ailing physical form, and Natalia was subjected to a mind transference. Whilst it appeared at first that this little orphaned girl had the mental fortitude to force Alex out of her mind, it may be that not all is as it seems. The Bakers, Resident Evil 7. When Ethan Winters arrives at the bayou of Dulvey, Louisiana, it isn't too long before he winds up getting caught in what can only be described as a family affair. The Twisted Bakers try to force him to eat their cannibalistic dinner, chase him around the estate with shovels and chainsaws, and generally put Ethan through hell, like they have done every other person who has stumbled upon their estate in the last few years, such as the Sewer Gators film crew. Jack is the unstoppable stalker, Marguerite the demented mother of bugs, Lucas the sociopathic game show host, and rounding them out is the mysterious yet also aloof Zoe. But they were yet again an example of people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. In October of 2014, a terrible storm brings an ocean liner into the bayou not far outside the home of the Bakers. Investigating the matter, Jack Baker finds the bodies of Connections member Mia Winters, and most importantly, the E-Series bioweapon, Evelyn. It isn't long before her mutamycete infection starts to make its moves into the Baker family's minds, giving them the abilities to regenerate, but also forcing them to surrender their free will to her desires for a subservient family. We see elements of this in the Daughters DLC for the game, but Ethan gets a moment in the main campaign when he is covered in the mold and therefore able to reach a kind of collective consciousness, tapping into the true mind of Jack Baker therein. The patriarch of the family pleads with him to grant his family freedom from Evelyn's control, showing us a glimpse of the real man that existed before his soul was lost to the bioweapon. There is an outlier. Lucas remains the only member of the Bakers who is completely unsympathetic. Unbeknownst to his family, he had been a psychopathic killer long before the infection came along and relishes in his new powers, whereas his parents suffer. The protective Jack and the nurturing Marguerite find their personalities completely twisted by Evelyn's gift, and their lives are forfeited to her desires. And, whilst Zoe is lucky enough to be able to resist Evelyn's control, she has to live for years around her family as they transform and live as murderous ghouls. And these are just 5 examples of tragic characters in the Resident Evil universe. For more, check out the first video on this subject, and don't forget to subscribe on the day or click that bell to stay up to date with the podcast and future video content. I've been Steve for First Aid Spray. Remember, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.